To think about subtraction, let's consider this problem here. We've got 5 minus 2, and we know that's 3. But let's look at it on the number line. So suppose that we draw us a number line right here. And what we can do is, how about if we put a 0 right here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the number line, to make this addition, we're going to start ourselves at 0. So if we start at 0, and then we come over to 5, right, let's come down to 5. So that's our 5, right? Here's our 5. We're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units to the right. And then we're going to subtract 2. So why don't we go, we're at the 5. If we go back 2, now you can see we're at 3. So what we're saying here is that just visually, it looks like 5 minus 2 equals 3. Okay, so now let's consider this one. This is 5 plus negative 2. So we've got numbers with opposite signs. We know how to do this already, but let's do this by looking at the number line. I'll draw another number line. Here's our 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to start out here at the 5. So let's go from 0 out to the 5, so we'll go at our 0, out here 5 units, and then what I want to do is I want to add negative 2. Now I'm going to add, but negative 2, so that's a negative direction. So if I move now in the negative direction 2 units, I'm still here at 3, right? So what I'm getting is that 5 plus negative 2 is equal to 3. So let's do this. Let's compare these two results. Let's take this one. 5 minus 2 is 3. And compare it to this one down here. 5 plus negative 2 is 3. Now, this one, we know how to do, right? Adding two numbers with opposite signs. Here's a subtraction. So we can say that this one here, that 5 minus 2, we can say that 5 minus 2, that is the same as, equal to, this one down here, 5 plus negative 2. 5 plus negative 2, as both of them are 3. So what this tells us now is that if we have two numbers, A and B, and we perform this subtraction, A minus B, that's the same as taking A and adding the opposite of B. So what we're going to do is down here. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to change subtraction to addition of the opposite. So here's a definition of subtraction. Subtraction is just really addition, but of the opposite. So I'm going to go up here to the top now. Let's go up here and let's write something like this. Number 1, if we have this 5 minus 3, we can actually write that now as 5 plus negative 3. Right? So what we're doing, we're taking subtraction, changing it to addition, and the opposite of this number. Right? Subtraction to addition of the opposite. And now we've got an addition of two numbers with opposite signs. So we find their absolute values. We'll take the absolute value of 5, which is 5, the absolute value of negative 3, which is 3, and we will subtract the smaller from the larger. That'll look like this. Now I know this looks kind of silly because it's just going in circles. 5 minus 3, knowing that that is equal to 2. And then to this 2, we will assign the sign of the larger absolute value. This is the larger absolute value. This number is positive, so this will be a positive 2. Now look, here's what we did. This is circular just because we know how to do this already. 5 minus 3 is 2. We went through all of this just to get our original problem. But now, let's try number 2. What if we do 3 minus 5? All right, now because what we're going to do is we're going to change subtraction to addition of the opposite. We're going to have 3 plus, there's subtraction to addition. The opposite of 5 is negative 5. Now we are adding two numbers with opposite signs. So we find their absolute values. Let's do it here. So we're going to get the absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Then we will subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger one. All right, so it's going to be this from this, so it's going to be 5 minus 3 from the larger, subtract the smaller. And now we know what this is. This is equal to 2. And we assign which sign? Well, the sign with the larger absolute value. Here's the larger absolute value. That number is a negative 5, so that is the sign that we're going to assign to this 2. So what we're going to write now then is this. Let's say, so 3 minus 5, that's our original problem, right? 3 minus 5. 3 minus 5 is negative 2. And you might want to think of it this way. If you start out with $3 and lose $5, you're down $2. Let's take a look at this one. We've got this number, negative 6, and we're going to subtract 4. So let's change subtraction to addition of the opposite. So we'll get negative 6, subtraction to addition of the opposite, and the opposite of 4 is going to be negative 4. Now what we're doing is we're adding two numbers with the same sign, right? We're adding two negative numbers. So if we go through the whole process here, we are going to take their absolute values. Absolute value of negative 6 is 6. Absolute value of negative 4 is 4. We're going to add the absolute values, getting 10, and then we use the same sign, right? And in this case, both these numbers are now negative. So the sign that we will assign to the 10 is going to be a negative. So we're going to say now that negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10. Let's try this one. We're going to take the number 8 and subtract the number negative 10. So we're going to have 8 minus negative 10. So what we'll do is we'll change subtraction to addition. Let's do that. 8 plus, and then we'll change this to the opposite. The opposite of negative 10 is positive 10. Now we know that 8 plus 10 is 18. There we go. Let's try this one. 5 minus negative 5. So it's the subtraction, so change it to addition. We'll get 5 plus, now the opposite of negative 5 is positive 5. So we'll get 5 plus 5, which we know to be 10. All right, so now what we've got is this. We've got a subtraction here, 0 minus 8. We're going to change subtraction to addition. So we're going to take 0, change it to addition of the opposite. Now the opposite of 8 is negative 8. So if we add 0 and negative 8, when you add 0 to any number, it does not change the identity of that number. So this just becomes negative 8. Let's try this one here. So we've got, in this one we have two subtractions. So I've got a subtraction here and a subtraction here. I'm going to change both of these to additions, so it'll look like this. Negative 6 plus, change this one over here to a plus, right? I've changed the subtractions to additions of the opposites. Now the opposite of negative 5 is 5, and the opposite of 10 is negative 10. And now doing these two at a time, negative 6 plus 5, let's just think of this. You're down 6, you're going to add 5, so we're down 1, so it's going to be negative 1. Or you can do this using the rules that we developed, right? If you add two numbers with opposite signs, you find their absolute values and then subtract. Absolute value here is 6, absolute value is 5. Subtract the smaller from the larger. 5 from 6 is 1, and use the sign of the larger absolute value, which is that. Or just think, I'm down 6, I get 5, and now I'm down only 1. And now I'm going to add, I'm going to add negative 10. And now what I'm doing is I'm adding two numbers with the same sign, so I'll add their absolute values. Just do it in your head. You get a 1 and a 10. You add those, you get an 11, and assign the common sign. Both these are negative, so we'll put a negative on that. All right, now in this one, what we're going to do is, let's get this number here, and then we'll subtract this number here. So let's work here, and we'll work here. So I'm going to do this one first, and then minus, then we'll do this one. All right, so doing it step by step in this first one, we're going to have 1. Now change the subtraction to addition. So it'll be 1 plus negative 10. Now I'm just going to follow this one straight down. I'm adding two numbers with opposite signs. So I find their absolute values, 1 and 10. Take the subtraction. 10 minus 1 is 9. Assign the sign of the larger absolute value, which is negative. So this becomes negative 9. Or you can just think of this one like this. If you have one object and then you lose 10 of the same type of objects, you're down 9. Okay, so let's work in this one right here. This is a subtraction. We're going to change that subtraction to addition. Change the subtraction to addition, and then the opposite of 15 is negative 15. All right, so we're going to have this number minus, well, let's get it, minus this number here. And this number here is, right, absolute value of 2 is 2, absolute value is 15, negative 15 is 15, 15 minus 2 is 13, and the sign that we're going to assign is the negative, so there's our negative 13. 2 plus negative 15 is negative 13. Or if you get used to doing this, you can see I've got 2, I lose 15, I'm down 13. And now what I've got is a minus here, right? We're going to subtract, so we've changed subtraction to addition of the opposite. So we're going to have negative 9 plus negative 13, and just to make it look more reasonable, we're going to write that, and we have the negative 9 plus the negative 13. Otherwise, I've got a plus and a minus sign looking right next to each other. Now what I'm doing is I'm adding two numbers with the same sign. So I'm going to just find their absolute values, 9 and 13, add those together. That gives us 22. And I'm going to use the common sign. So both these are negatives, right? So let's assign a negative to this. Let's try another one. Let's go with negative 26. We're going to add 7. Then from that result, that sum, we're going to subtract 52. So working 2 at a time, we'll get negative 26 plus 7. Now what we're doing is we're adding two numbers with opposite signs, right? Negative and positive. So we know how to do this. You find their absolute values. The absolute value of negative 26 is 26. The absolute value of 7 is 7. Take the larger absolute value minus the smaller one. So the absolute value is 26 minus the smaller 7. 26 minus 7, 19. But the sign that we assign here, the sign that we use is coming from the larger absolute value, which is from this number. That's going to be that negative sign. So this is going to give us negative 19 minus 52. Now, I've got a subtraction here, right? We've got a subtraction, so we change that subtraction to addition, negative 19 plus of the opposite of 52, which is negative 52. And now we're adding, right? We're adding two numbers with the same sign, negative and negative. So we find their absolute values, 19 and 52, right? Absolute value here is 19. Absolute value here is 52. So we add those absolute values together, 19 and 52. Well, if this was 20, it'd be 20 and 52 is 72, but back it off one, it's going to be a 71. So it's going to be a 71, and the common sign here is that negative sign, so we're going to put that with our 71. So we'll say that what we started with, negative 26 plus 7, that was negative 19, subtract 52, altogether we get negative 71.